Did N actually get the 8 Unova gym badges before challenging Alder in Pokémon Black and White? Some fans think he didn't, because his name doesn't appear on any of the gym statues. This cute detail shows the order in which you and your childhood friends get each badge. But why isn't N's name on these? Well, because he isn't your childhood friend. At the start of the games, Professor Juniper introduces Charon and Bianca, and it's their names that appear on the statues, no one else's. This would also explain why we don't see Charon, Bianca, or even the original players' names on these statues in Black 2 and White 2, even after using the Memory Link feature to get the prequel's save data. The new player character only knows Hugh before the game starts, so only their and Hugh's names get featured. And we know for a fact that plenty of other trainers have beaten these gyms because of the Black and White badge check gates. An ace trainer here confirms that you can't progress to Victory Road without all the badges, meaning every trainer in Victory Road has all 8 badges. Thinking that N cheated past the badge check gates creates more questions than it answers. You could say that N returned to his castle and infiltrated the Pokémon League through there. But then, why does he bother battling the Elite Four? Wouldn't Getsus have made a secret path from the castle leading directly to the champion's room? Or if N somehow just flew over the gates, why didn't he land on the stage where he could fight Alder directly? And while I appreciate the detail that Alder nobly tells the Elite Four not to impede N's progress if he rightfully defeats them, which juxtaposes Getsus underhandedly commanding the sages to block the player's path, is it a rightful defeat if N shouldn't be there to begin with? Why doesn't anyone question how N got there without any badges? And if N could skip the gym leaders, why can't you? Later in the games, Alder asks for your help to defeat N in case N defeats him. If Alder already anticipated needing your help, why doesn't he let you wait with him at the Pokémon League instead of making you battle the gym leaders and Elite Four first? In fact, if N didn't need the gym badges to battle Alder, only the legendary dragon to convince the rest of the region that he was the next hero of Unova, he could have just waited in Opelucid City for Alder to catch up and challenge him there, in front of a huge audience. This setup would actually be more in line with most other Pokémon games, which have the player defeating the evil team and catching the box art legendary Pokémon before the final gym. But N makes it clear that he wants to defeat Alder in a traditional battle for the champion title at the Pokémon League. That's why he tells the player in Nimbasa City that in order to defeat him, they have to get all the badges and face him at the Pokémon League. But that ultimatum falls flat under the assumption that N didn't get any badges himself. In fact, what does N care if you do things the right way if he knows he's going to cheat the system? N is misguided, yes, but he's still a respectable opponent, as admitted by Alder and Charon at the end of the games, and as conveyed through all the times N talks about how much he cares about Pokémon, respects the player character, and wants people to release their Pokémon not by force, but because they truly agree with N's values. It just doesn't align with N's character to expect the player to play fair when he knows he himself won't. There's also some confusion about Drayden's dialogue after defeating him in Opelucid City in Black version. I know Alder's strength, but I don't know the depths of N's power. While I can see how this line can seem to imply that N didn't battle Drayden, I've watched enough anime to know that when someone says, "I don't know the true extent of their power," it doesn't mean the characters in question never challenged each other. N very well may have defeated Drayden, but didn't use his full power to do so, and Drayden could sense that. It actually makes sense when you consider that Drayden also claims to know Alder's strength, despite not battling him for a long time. Drayden is the only gym leader who doesn't coddle Alder when he expresses despair over his impending defeat by N, instead calling him out for neglecting his duties as champion and thus dulling his skills as a trainer. As the final gym leader with connections to the ancient legends of Unova, Alder is strong, wise, and even a little mysterious. He can tell that Alder isn't the best trainer he could be, and that N doesn't need to go all out to defeat the gym leaders. Black and White actually cleverly showcase how N never really uses his full power throughout the games. Cheren is meant to be a strategic trainer, and this is shown through the gameplay by giving all his Pokémon held items. Bianca, your weaker rival who N claims can never become stronger on the other hand, has no held items on her Pokémon, but does use potions during battle. So you'd think N, who is supposed to be the strongest trainer in the region besides the player, would use a combination of both, right? Well, not even in the final battle against N do any of his Pokémon have held items. This is actually a logical choice for N to make. He releases his Pokémon after each battle. Why bother suiting them up with held items if they're not going to stick around? But it also shows how N is, narratively, an innately great trainer. He doesn't battle as strategically as someone like Cheren, but still wins far more often. And since being a great trainer is often proportionate to how much you care for your Pokémon, it shows just how deep N's love for Pokémon runs. Black and White take the approach that they do because N is supposed to be a parallel to the Gen 1 rival Blue. In Gen 1, battling Blue at the end of the Pokémon League is a culmination of the rival and gym challenge storylines, and Professor Oak confirms that part of the reason the player is the better trainer is because the player loves their Pokémon more. In Gen 5, battling N at the end of the Pokémon League is a culmination of the rival, gym challenge, and villainous team storylines. And the reason N lost isn't because he doesn't love his Pokémon, but because he doesn't really listen to them when they insist that they want to remain with their trainers. N's ability to speak to Pokémon is a huge boon for him as a loving and skilled trainer, as it creates a sort of universal language that they share. And this parallels the mathematics that N loves so much, because math is also thought of as a universal language. But a shared language doesn't build bridges between people on its own, because communication goes much deeper than simply knowing what the other party is saying. It requires really listening, understanding, and considering what's being said before making your own decision. This is why N was able to outperform Cheren and defeat Alder, both of whom dismissed N's ideas without giving them a chance, and why he loses to the player, who agrees with N's conceptual desires, but not his methods. Unfortunately, Blue doesn't experience any character development in Gen 1, where he doesn't discover for himself what he's doing wrong, but instead is just told by Professor Oak right before the game ends and never has a chance to act on it. N, on the other hand, is an elevated version of Blue, complete with greater ties to his game's themes and a fully realized character arc that occurs throughout the entire story. This lends credence to the idea that N did in fact receive the Unova gym badges off-screen, just like how Blue got all the Kanto gym badges off-screen. Other interpretations of this point, such as N being an entirely underhanded and ignoble opponent who expects the player to play fair while he cheats his way into the Pokémon League, only look at bits and pieces of the story out of context, and not the entire picture. Interpreting N's character as having obtained all the gym badges allows us to see how Black and White use even small gameplay details, like N not using held items in battle, to enhance its narrative, instead of spoon-feeding every little detail to the player. It also reveals how Black and White elevate the ideas behind Gen 1's story to create a more comprehensive narrative overall.